Welcome back, everyone. Get ready because today we're diving deep, really deep, into something pretty amazing. We're talking about hydroponic fodder production.
Oh, yeah, this is a fascinating one. It's got a lot of potential, especially in places struggling with keeping up with the demand for livestock feed.
Right. And think about the added pressure from climate change, making things even tougher for farmers.
Exactly. But that's where hydroponics comes in. This method might just be a game changer, a real solution to a lot of these problems.
I like the way you think. So before we get ahead of ourselves, can you give us a little context? Why is livestock so important in a place like India? And what are the biggest challenges they're facing when it comes to feeding all those animals?
Well, livestock is a lifeline for many, especially small farmers. It's income, it's nutrition, it's like a safety net in tough times.
Makes sense. But where does the challenge come in?
The livestock population is growing rapidly, and traditional ways of producing fodder, the feed for the animals, they just can't keep up.
So it's a classic supply and demand problem then.
Yeah, pretty much. But it's not just that. You got to factor in climate change.
Right, of course. Erratic weather patterns, droughts one year, floods the next, make it even harder to grow fodder the traditional way.
You got it. And that's where this hydroponics thing comes in. It's efficient, and it's not as affected by the crazy weather.
Now you're talking. Okay, so break it down for us. What exactly is hydroponics, and how does it work?
Think of it this way. It's basically growing plants without soil.
No soil. How's that even possible?
The magic happens with a special water solution. It's packed with all the nutrients the plants need to grow. But let's start from the beginning. First, we got to choose the right seeds, the ones that'll do well in this type of system.
Sounds pretty specific. What happens next?
We got to make sure those seeds are squeaky clean. So we sterilize them, get rid of any bacteria or fungi that could mess things up. It's like creating a super clean environment for them to grow in.
Gotcha. So no unwanted guests crashing the party.
Exactly. Then comes the soaking stage. We dunk those seeds in water, give them a good soak to kickstart the whole germination process.
Sounds simple enough.
Oh, but here's the cool part. As they start to sprout, they actually release enzymes that boost their nutritional value.
Hold on. So not only are we speeding up the growth process, we're making the fodder more nutritious in the process.
You got it. Those sprouts are packing some serious nutritional punch. Protein, vitamins, minerals, you name it.
Impressive. So we've got these supercharged sprouts. What's next?
Time for them to move into their new home. We transfer them to special trays designed for drainage and airflow, preventing mold and making sure they grow healthy and strong.
So no soil at all, just
Right.
water and those nutrients you mentioned?
Yeah, that's the beauty of it. The plants get everything they need directly from that water solution. It's like a direct delivery system.
Pretty efficient, I got to say. So how long does it take for these sprouts to become actual fodder, the kind livestock can eat?
Well, it depends on the crop, but usually it's super fast. We're talking like 8 to 14 days.
Wow, that's way quicker than traditional methods.
No kidding. And that's just one of the many benefits of hydroponic fodder. But to really grasp the potential here, we need to dive into the research and see what the scientists are saying.
Okay, let's do it. What have they discovered about growing different types of fodder crops this way?
They've been experimenting with all sorts of crops. Maize, barley, oats, cowpea, you name it. And the results are exciting. They're getting higher yields, and the water efficiency is off the charts.
Give us some specifics. Just how much water are we talking about saving here?
Okay, get this. Studies show that hydroponics can use as little as 2 to 5% of the water needed for traditional fodder production. For instance, to grow a kilogram of barley fodder the old way, you'd need around 73 liters of water. With hydroponics, you're looking at less than 2 liters.
That's a massive difference. So we're talking about faster production, smaller spaces, and using way less water. Anything else that makes this so groundbreaking?
Here's another big one. You can do this year-round, rain or shine, hot or cold, it doesn't matter. You get a consistent supply of high-quality fodder, even in places struggling with water or unpredictable weather.
This could be a game changer for livestock farming, especially with climate change making things so unpredictable.
You said it. But it's not just about logistics and the environment. We also have to consider how this super fodder impacts the animals themselves.
Now we're getting to the good stuff.
Yeah.
How does eating hydroponic fodder affect livestock?
Studies show all sorts of positive things happening. Milk production goes up, meat quality improves, and the animals are generally healthier.
So it's not just about efficiency. It's about happy and healthy animals.
Exactly. There are dairy farmers in Maharashtra, India, who switched to hydroponic fodder. Some saw milk production jump by half a liter to 2.5 liters per cow per day.
That's a big deal, especially for their bottom line. But let's talk about the economics. Is this a realistic option for farmers, especially smaller ones, who might not have a lot of money to invest in new technology?
That's the million-dollar question, right? And the answer is, it can be. The upfront cost of setting up a hydroponic system might seem a little high, but the cost of producing each kilogram of fodder is actually lower. So in the long run, they could save money.
So it's an investment that pays off over time.
That's the idea. Plus, there are all sorts of low-cost systems out there specifically designed for smaller farms or folks with limited resources. It's becoming more and more accessible.
That's encouraging to hear. Okay, let's do a quick recap. What are the main advantages of this hydroponic fodder thing?
All right, here we go. First off, it takes up way less land. That's a big deal when land is scarce or expensive. Plus, it grows much faster, as we talked about, and the controlled environment means fewer diseases.
And don't forget about the year-round production aspect. Fresh, nutritious fodder no matter what the weather's doing outside.
Oh, yeah, and the nutritional value is through the roof. More protein, vitamins, minerals, and all those good enzymes. It's like a superfood for livestock.
Are there any precautions farmers need to take with this method?
Like anything else, there are best practices. Mold can be an issue in warm and humid places, but spraying the seeds in trays with a baking soda or potassium bicarbonate solution can prevent that. Simple fix.
Good tip. So it seems like hydroponic fodder checks all the boxes. It's efficient, good for the environment, good for the animals, and it makes economic sense. But what about the research side of things? What else are scientists digging into?
You're right, it's still a relatively new field. There's so much more to learn. For instance, they're looking at ways to standardize those low-cost systems we talked about, make them even better. They're also exploring how to recycle the water used in the system, make it even more sustainable.
Fascinating stuff.
Yeah.
Sounds like we've only just begun to explore what's possible with hydroponic fodder. What are your thoughts on the most impactful aspect of all this?
For me, it's the potential to tackle the big challenges in agriculture. Limited land, not enough water, and the craziness of climate change. Hydroponics offers a solution that's both efficient and sustainable, and that's a pretty exciting combination.
I couldn't agree more. It just shows that innovation can play a huge role in creating a more resilient and sustainable future for food production. And we're just getting started, folks. In the next part of our deep dive, we'll look at real-world examples of hydroponic fodder production and the impact it's having on farmers and communities around the globe.
We'll see how this tech is being put into action. Stay tuned. Welcome back to our deep dive into hydroponic fodder.
It's amazing to think about all the potential benefits we just unpacked.
There's one area that's got me really intrigued, and that's the idea of growing those typical pasture grasses, the kind livestock usually graze on, hydroponically.
You mean like taking those grasses out of the fields and growing them indoors with this system?
Exactly. Can you imagine? It could revolutionize grazing systems, especially in places where land or water is scarce.
Now that you mention it, the research did talk about experimenting with a wide range of crops.
That's right. They're already seeing good results with things like maize, barley, cowpea, even millets. So why not grasses?
I guess there's no reason why it couldn't work. Picture this. Farmers having a steady supply of fresh, green grass all year round, no matter what the weather's doing outside.
That's the dream. And it wouldn't just be good for the farmers and the animals. Think about the environment.
Okay, how so?
Well, less land needed for grazing means more land for other things, like planting trees or creating habitats for wildlife.
That's a great point. And of course, there's the water-saving aspect we keep talking about.
Absolutely. Hydroponics is already super efficient with water. Imagine applying that to grass production, especially in those drier regions. It could make a huge difference.
Less land, less water, and a more reliable food source for the animals. But what about the nutritional value? Would hydroponically grown grass be as good as what they'd get in a pasture?
It's a good question, and honestly, we need more research to be sure. But early studies suggest it could be just as nutritious, maybe even more so, than conventionally grown grass.
So we're talking about higher protein, more vitamins and minerals.
Exactly. And remember, with hydroponics, you can tweak the nutrient solution to give the animals exactly what they need.
It's like a custom-designed diet for peak performance. I know we also touched on organic milk production. How does hydroponics play into that?
Well, one of the big things with organic farming is avoiding those synthetic fertilizers and pesticides, right?
And since hydroponics doesn't use soil, It wouldn't need those synthetic inputs.
Bingo. So as long as you use organic nutrients and manage the growing environment carefully, you could produce fodder that meets those strict organic standards.
Wow, imagine dairy farmers being able to produce organic milk using this hydroponically grown feed.
It's an exciting possibility, and it just shows how versatile this hydroponic fodder system can be. It's not just about efficiency or the environment, it's about opening up new possibilities in the food system.
And speaking of the environment, what about that water recycling idea we talked about?
Oh yeah, remember, hydroponics is already amazing at conserving water. But what if we could close the loop and recycle the water used in the system?
You mean create a system where the water is constantly reused, like a closed cycle?
Exactly. Less waste, less dependence on external water sources, even more sustainable.
Are there any technical hurdles to overcome with that?
There are definitely some things to figure out, like preventing salts and other stuff from building up in the water. But researchers are working on different filtration and treatment methods to solve those problems.
Sounds like a lot of room for innovation and new technology.
Absolutely. The more we research, the closer we get to creating these truly sustainable, closed-loop systems that can produce high-quality fodder with minimal impact on the environment.
So we've talked about growing grasses, organic milk, and water recycling. What other research gaps are scientists focusing on?
Well, in a place like India, with so many small farms, figuring out how to standardize those low-cost hydroponic units is really important.
So making the technology accessible to everyone, not just the big operations?
Exactly. We need systems that are affordable, user-friendly, and tailored to the needs of those smaller farms. Researchers are experimenting with different materials, designs, even using local resources to make these units cheaper and more efficient.
That's a great example of how local needs can drive innovation.
It really is. This kind of tailored approach will be key to making sure this hydroponic fodder thing benefits farmers all over the world.
Before we wrap this up, there's one more research area that I found really interesting.
Yeah.
And that's quantifying the nutrients in the fodder throughout the entire process.
Yeah, understanding how the nutrient content changes over time is really important.
So why is that research so crucial?
It all comes down to optimizing the nutritional value of the fodder, making sure those animals are getting the best possible nutrition at every stage.
So they're looking at how things like the seed type, the nutrient solution, and the growing conditions affect the nutrient content.
Exactly. That way, farmers can fine-tune their systems to produce the perfect fodder for their animals, whether they're young and growing or producing milk or meat.
It's like precision nutrition for livestock.
That's a great way to put it. It shows how much more there is to learn and how important it is to keep refining these techniques.
So we've gone from the science to the real-world applications, and now we've even touched on the future of research in this field. It's clear that hydroponic fodder production is more than just a cool idea. It's a whole field full of possibilities.
We've only scratched the surface of what this technology can do.
Now, I think it's time to move from the lab to the field.
In the final part of our deep dive, we'll explore how this is actually happening on farms around the world.
Stay tuned as we meet the people who are putting this innovative technology into action. All right, welcome back to the deep dive. We've been on quite a journey with this hydroponic fodder thing. From the science and research to the potential benefits, it's been fascinating. But now, let's shift gears and see how this tech is actually playing out in the real world, on actual farms.
Yeah, time to meet the people who are putting this stuff into action, the farmers, the innovators.
Exactly. We've talked about the possibilities, but what about the real-world success stories? Are there any examples of this technology making a difference out there?
Oh, absolutely. There are some really inspiring examples popping up all over the globe. One that comes to mind is in India, Maharashtra to be specific, a group of dairy farmers there. They were dealing with some serious water shortages, so they decided to give hydroponics a shot.
I remember reading about that. Their milk production went way up after they made the switch.
You got it. Not only that, they noticed their cows were healthier overall.
So less water, more milk, and healthier animals. Sounds like a triple win to me.
It really is. It just shows the real, tangible benefits this hydroponic fodder can bring to farmers and their communities.
It's a great example of how technology can help farmers overcome challenges and build a more sustainable way of life.
Couldn't agree more. And this isn't just happening in India. Hydroponic fodder is catching on everywhere, from small farms in Africa to big commercial operations in the U.S.
It's becoming a global movement, you might say. What do you think is driving this widespread adoption?
I think it's the combination of all those advantages we've been discussing. It's water-wise, it saves land, it can handle tough climates, and it produces top-notch feed.
And that appeals to both farmers and consumers, especially these days, with the environment and food security being such big concerns.
Exactly. Plus, as the technology gets better and more refined, the costs are coming down, which makes it even more appealing to a wider range of farmers.
So it's not just for the big guys. It's a viable option for smaller farms, too, which is great news.
Absolutely. That's what makes it so powerful. It levels the playing field and gives everyone a chance to produce high-quality fodder in a sustainable way.
We've talked a lot about the farmers, but let's not forget about the animals. How are they benefiting from this whole thing?
Well, the research we discussed earlier was pretty clear. Hydroponic fodder is linked to better animal health, more productivity, and overall well-being.
Increased milk production, better quality meat, less need for antibiotics. It seems like a more ethical and sustainable way to raise livestock.
For sure. As more and more people care about where their food comes from, I think hydroponic fodder is going to become even more important in the future of animal agriculture.
So it's good for the farmers, good for the animals, good for the planet. But what about the folks at the end of the chain, the consumers? How does this impact them?
Well, think about it this way. Hydroponic fodder could lead to a more reliable food supply. When we're less dependent on traditional farming, which can be vulnerable to all sorts of things, it creates more stability.
So potentially it could mean greater food security and maybe even lower prices for consumers down the line.
It's definitely possible. And beyond the economics, consumers can also feel good about supporting a more sustainable and ethical food system.
By choosing products from animals that were raised on this type of fodder, they're essentially voting for less water use, less land degradation, and a smaller environmental footprint overall.
Precisely. It's all about making conscious choices and supporting practices that align with our values.
It sounds like hydroponic fodder has the potential to reshape the way we view food, farming, and our connection to the environment.
It's a reminder that innovation and technology can be powerful tools for building a better future, a more sustainable and equitable food system for everyone.
I like that. It's inspiring to see how human ingenuity can come up with solutions to some of the biggest challenges we face. So, as we wrap up this deep dive into the world of hydroponic fodder, what's the key message you'd like our listeners to take away from all this?
Well, for me, it's the sheer potential of this technology to tackle those big global issues we're all grappling with. Things like climate change, dwindling resources, and making sure everyone has enough to eat.
It gives you hope, right? That we don't have to just accept things as they are. We can innovate, we can find new solutions, and we can create a better future.
Absolutely. Hydroponic fodder is a perfect example of that. It's a beacon of hope, showing us what's possible when we combine creativity with a commitment to sustainability.
Well said. And with that, we come to the end of our journey into the world of hydroponic fodder production. It's been a pleasure exploring this with you, and we hope you found it as fascinating as we did. Thanks for joining us on the Deep Dive.
Until next time, keep those minds curious and keep exploring the world around you.